about 40% of the units are actually rent stabilized. And these units are meant for people who have trouble paying rent, who can't afford rent, because affordability is a major topic. And Assemblyman Mamdani is a man who can obviously afford rent. He's a man of means, but he's living in a rent-stabilized apartment.
How many New Yorkers would have their lives upended by a former governor who is responding to the fact that he was handedly beaten by a tenant of a rent-stabilized apartment?
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One's investigative reporter, Courtney Gross. It's the dog days of summer, but the general election is heating up. The topic, a rent-stabilized apartment in Astoria inhabited by Zohran Mamdani. Andrew Cuomo is trying to use it to his advantage, but will it work? We'll discuss. And then, while it may be more than a year away, we have another election to talk about, believe it or not, and that, of course, is the re-election effort by Governor Kathy Hochul. We have a new poll this week showing that she has a slight uptick in her approval rating, but she might have a fierce challenger in the form of an upstate Congresswoman, Elise Stefanik. So we'll get to all of that, and joining me for the discussion is our Bobby Cuza.
Hey, Courtney. Welcome back.
Thanks. Did you miss me?
Well, yes. I had to fill in for Courtney last week,
Yeah.
as our loyal listeners and viewers know, and it's tough to fill that chair.
This chair is like,
Yeah.
you know, it's a big seat to fill, right?
Bobby was really nervous. Almost had to hold his hand.
I listened.
Sweating.
It was really good. Bernadette Hogan is also here. We have a lot to get to, so let's just jump right in. Obviously, when I was away, this idea of this rent-stabilized apartment that Zohran Mamdani inhabits, lives in Astoria for $2,300 a month, became such a hot topic. I don't want to personalize it, but I'm gonna. My first apartment in New York City was in the border of Long Island City in Astoria, and it was also rent stabilized.
How much did you pay?
I paid $1,340 a month. This was 2007.
Did you know that it was rent stabilized?
I signed the paperwork. I had no idea what that meant.
Right.
You know, like I was like, whatever, this is fine. But at the time I was making, and I'm fine disclosing this, maybe $30,000 a year, and I could barely afford the $1,340.
Yeah, that also seems like a lot because for that time, because
And that neighborhood.
My
Yeah.
friends, when I remember we graduated college, 3 of them were each paying something like $1,100.
Oh man, that's nice.
But
Maybe
for
that was
3
rent controlled,
but for
that's
3
different.
people.
There's so each person.
Maybe
We shouldn't go down this rabbit hole.
I know, I'm not good at
Rent-stabilized
math.
apartments.
I'm not good at
Anyway,
math.
yeah, we know that Byrne's strong suit is not mathematics. But anyway, so Zohran Mamdani has this apartment. Andrew Cuomo's going after him, basically saying that we should have means testing, that certain people of a certain income, rich people, should not be able to inhabit rent-stabilized apartments. We should note that this is rent-stabilized, not rent-controlled. Rent-stabilized are dictated by the Rent Guidelines Board. They can go up by a certain percentage every single year. This is what the freezing of the rent that Zohran Mamdani's campaign is all about. I mean, is this a successful argument?
Well, and by the way, Cuomo seemed to confuse rent control and rent stabilization in the initial tweet.
He called it rent control.
And I mean, the way this unfolded was interesting because there was a tweet, a social media post last week. I forget what day this was.
Friday, I think.
And I'm reading from it. He said, Cuomo says, somewhere last night in New York City, a single mother and her children slept at a homeless shelter because you, Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, are occupying her rent-controlled apartment. It's not rent-controlled, of course. And then he called on him to move out immediately and give his affordable housing back to an unhoused family who needs it, which was like a pretty wild post, a pretty wild personal attack on Mamdani. And then only a few days later, on Monday was when he actually started to put out this policy proposal that people
Zohran's
law, as he called it, which basically says
Wouldn't
that
even affect him, but whatever.
Right.
We'll get to the details of that anyway.
Right. It basically says wealthy people or people who make a certain income level as a percentage of the rent shouldn't be allowed to get a rent stabilized apartment. So it started out as this very personal attack, and Mamdani, we'll talk more about his response, but he was doing these events this week, and he uses this phrase that it's petty vindictiveness on the part of Cuomo, and then he's sort of like working backwards from that. And it does seem like, he started with the attack and then he just sort of came up with the proposal afterwards, because he's trying to, his new attack line is that Mamdani is this like spoiled rich kid and he has millionaire parents.
But we don't even know if that's true. I mean, Bern, you should be able to answer this, hopefully. But he obviously, they talk about the compound in Uganda. They say that his father is a Columbia University professor, longtime Columbia University professor, and his mother is a filmmaker whose films were successful in the early 2000s.
But she's a very successful filmmaker.
Yeah, but I mean, this idea, I guess we don't know how much money they're actually worth. But
that's the thing.
Mamdani's salary is what, $142,000
as a state legislator. And then we can assume, like Cuomo did, how much his wife is making.
I love how he just like made it up and
Right,
pulled
Cuomo
it out of full airs. Like maybe she makes $60K a year as an
which would
artist
bring
and
the dual
illustrator.
income into $200,000, which, I mean...
None of it may be true, by the way.
None of it may be true. We don't know if...
She may make no money. She's an
we don't
artist.
know if Mamdani or his wife are trust fund babies. Yes, his family owns a compound in Uganda, but like...
And he owns property in Uganda. And by the way, Mamdani also makes a few $1,000s from music royalties from his rap career.
Right. So look, we just don't know the concrete number, but if we're just judging from that $142,000 salary plus whatever the wife's income is, and we're using the number that Cuomo brought up, which is $200,000 dual income, I mean, one could argue that $2,300 a month, is fine. But the question is, two things are happening here. Cuomo is making fun of Mamdani for allegedly being a spoiled rich kid, and also kind of confused about a policy that actually he did help sign into law in 2019 when he got rolled by the state legislature, when a massive package of rent tenant protections were put into place. It actually eliminated a means testing degree that permitted landlords to kick out tenants if they were making above a certain cap. This goes into a whole conversation about how landlords are now upset that they don't make enough for the price of...
They can't upkeep their apartments.
They can't upkeep their apartments.
Really, rent-stabilized apartments in particular happen to be old. They need a lot of rehabbing. They need a lot of renovation. And they say that because the rent isn't increasing at a faster rate, they can't do all of these improvements.
And if you talk to economists, like I interviewed someone from the Manhattan Institute who, talking straight down the middle, he was like, the problem is it messes with the rest of the market. You have a certain amount of finite apartments that are way below whatever market rate is. And the other thing too is you could pay a broker to get you a rent-stabilized apartment, and you could be making $500,000 a year. But the thing is, the program doesn't set income limits. So, there's a fundamental...
And there was this fierce response, I think, from the tenant and advocate community saying that this type of, quote, means testing, this idea that people should just pay 30% of their income and, you shouldn't be paying less of that on these, more affordable apartments. It seems like they were like, if you tried to upend this is a anti-housing, anti-tenant policy.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Cuomo tries to frame this like it's this populist idea, right? Which only low-income people should be allowed to live in rent-stabilized housing.
Program.
Right. It's not supposed to be. And it's not the craziest idea. I mean, we do means testing for affordable housing, which is like another category when there's new buildings like 421A and they have to have affordable units. You do have to make a certain income level to qualify for those. But what Cuomo's talking about, it's like even the progressive housing activists don't want this, and the landlords don't want it. The landlords don't want it because they don't want to only be able to allow low-income tenants into their buildings. So I don't know who Cuomo is winning over with this policy, or if he even wants to, right? I mean, part of it I think is just an attempt to embarrass Mamdani and maybe get under his skin a little bit.
And it's a new approach in his social, in his campaign in general. In fact, I forgot to print out what I wanted to print out. But while I was away last week, I noticed that Andrew Cuomo's new press releases. Let me see if I can search for it really fast.
Has the crown?
They have this new logo. Like the original logo was very reminiscent of his father's run for mayor back in decades ago. And it was blue and red and looked very similar to that and was modeled off of that. And this new one has a sun on it. Oh, I wish I'd print it out so
it
I
looks
could
like
show
a crown
our viewers on YouTube. But
But you know what too? But what Cuomo's trying to get at is, again, saying Mamdani is a Nepo baby, When one could argue Andrew Cuomo also is a Nepo baby too. His father was the governor of New York. Cuomo worked for his father's campaign. He had failed campaigns and didn't know what to do with himself. Ended up exiting the AG's race, then ran again, had a resurgence, won. So it's like there are similarities here between Cuomo and Mamdani if we want to go the Nepo baby route. But going
I'm
back,
so out of touch that I had to look up what Nepo baby was. I think Melissa DeRosso, the longtime aide of Cuomo, was tweeting about it, and I was like, "What's a Nepo?"
But it is out of touch for them to make fun of Mamdani for that when again Cuomo is the son of a former governor and again worked on his father's campaign. But going back, I asked Mamdani about the rent stabilization question earlier this week, and I said, just what if you were making $500,000? Would you move out of your apartment? Would that be because this is really the crux of it, where it's like, yes, it's not a low income program, but is it fair if a millionaire is living in an apartment where they're spending 23 grand a month? That's where this program goes to be a little bit out of whack.
Well, wait a minute. And by the way, we should note when Mamdani first got the apartment, he was only making
less than
$47,000 a year.
Yeah.
He was a counselor to people who were facing foreclosure. So again, even under Zohran's law, it wouldn't have affected. He would have still gotten the apartment because he wasn't making very much money.
The legislative proposal only applies to new tenants, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right,
not
it wouldn't
like
kick you out.
Yes, exactly.
Also, Cuomo needs help from Albany, and they're not going to do it. The thing is with the legislature, they're very pro-tenant, and if tenants' rights groups hate this, it's going nowhere. Just like every other, one of these policy ideas that comes out of these campaigns.
Wait, and Mamdani has this line that he's used more than once that says, I'll move out. Well, that too. I'm living rent free in Andrew Cuomo's head. I mean, that one was just served on a platter.
Sure.
But then also he says, he plans to move out and get a new place on the Upper East Side, meaning Gracie Mansion. Right.
His one aide said to me, well, he's famously trying to move to the Upper East Side. I was like, why? And then I was like,
oh, yeah.
I was like, right, a really nice public.
Who would want to live on the Upper East
free public
Side?
Housing.
Wait, can we talk about Cuomo's social media though? Because you brought this up.
Part of it, right? I think that this approach is him pivoting for the general election, trying to get more attention, doing a different approach on social media, the new logo, which I did at least write down in my notes that it's called To Build a New New York City, or NYC. And he's getting kind of, I don't want to say, is it nasty on social media?
It's snarky.
Okay, snarky.
He's trying to change his voice, which it's when sometimes accounts will tweet things and it will sound like the principal, AOC's, Mamdani's, their Twitter accounts sound like them.
They're probably, are they operating it?
And they might,
Who's operating it? But one can assume it's a little bit of both at this point. These are bigger operations than when they started. But Andrew Cuomo's new social media program has things like responding, thanks, bro. Yeah. Can you imagine him saying that?
There was some other
in his
slang
voice
that he used that I was like, what does that even mean?
I don't think
he's using Italian now. There's all this
Paisan, I think he threw out.
Paisan, which isn't.
It's there's no. I don't think there's. I don't even think the Cuomo campaign. I don't even think the Cuomo campaign would argue that Cuomo is actually behind his social. I mean, it sounds nothing like him.
Here's the other thing. Wait, Bobby, amazing point. Let's go back to the congressional hearing fantastic point. Good work. Thank you for being here for 30 years. Back to the congressional panel that was a bipartisan panel last fall where they were looking into Cuomo and his dealings during COVID in the nursing homes. There's documents submitted from former aides, sources, where Cuomo didn't even type out his emails. He would dictate it to his ex-aide Stephanie Benton, who's still with him, by the way, right now on the campaign, because he didn't know how to use a BlackBerry and he just wasn't good with email. He dictates.
He's of that generation.
Which is fine. But again, going back to the tweets, is he dictating this and that's how it's coming out? Which I think Trump does too, right? Trump dictates.
I'm not sure.
But either way, it's whose voice is this?
Well, and you run the. I mean, on the one hand, he's he's trying to shift strategies, which I get because the campaign in the primary didn't work.
Yeah.
But also, you're not going to beat Mamdani at his own game, right, on social media. And Mamdani, it comes naturally to him. He can connect with people on social media. And Cuomo, it's clearly not, and it's not in his voice. And you run the risk of seeming really inauthentic to people when you have this social media persona that's nothing like the candidate himself.
And I think there was somebody who wrote it might have been in the Times, where it's like, this is the age of authenticity. People like Donald Trump because he's authentic. People, are attracted to Zohran Mamdani because they know what he stands for. He's principled and he's true to himself, versus what Andrew Cuomo is doing right now. But I do want to make sure we talk a little bit about two other things. Obviously, Eric Adams was endorsed by Governor David Paterson this week. Paterson endorsed Andrew Cuomo during the primary, and he was actually the architect, we think, right? Like, he was the architect of
him and
being
Jim
saying
Walden,
that we should have a poll. Yeah, it was Jim Walden originally, and then David Paterson came on and decided, or just jumped onto the idea that we should have this poll later in the fall, September, to ensure or to determine who should be the one candidate to face off against Mamdani. But now Paterson is, I don't know, is he throwing that out the window, or is he saying that Adams is the person that should do it?
No, it's out the window. So, and by the way, he was actually sort of working for Jim Walden as like an advisor early on,
and then he at the launch.
And then he endorses Cuomo, and then he says, "Well, everybody's got to get out of the race except for one person." And then now, that was like a few weeks ago, and now he's like, "Oh, that's moot because nobody wanted to do it, so forget about it."
Eric Adams. Yeah, and there's some just speculation that I guess that Paterson is still a lobbyist. I mean, I know that he was working for the Sands project, the casino project,
and
but
they do have a long history, though, right? Like they were
tied up in the scandal around Aqueduct and casino.
That's a whole other story.
I think they served in the
state
legislature
Senate
together too. And then what was that, 20?
No, and I mean, they're close. Like, Patterson was talking yesterday about how that, like, Adams would call him late at night when he was going through all this stuff when he was governor back in 2010 or whatever it was. So it almost felt like this was personal. Like, it was like feels like from the heart that he was endorsing Adams, not because he thinks that Adams is going to win. And he almost like made reference to that, not in so many words, but basically saying, like, it's not that Adams is the strongest candidate to beat Mamdani, but like, what do I have to lose? Like, I'm going to endorse the guy because I have a personal relationship.
There might also be some like sweet like get back, or what's it called, payback, kickback. Who's corrupt? Who's not? But with this, remember Cuomo and Paterson. When was it? Paterson was
Cuomo put the kibosh on Paterson's attempt to run for governor. So there's some beef there, even though he decided to endorse them anyway. It didn't really make that much sense.
So it might seem like sweet victory for Paterson to say, listen, you're dead in the water. I'm going to go with Eric Adams.
This other guy. So Mamdani has been doing this 5-borough tour. He's going to be where in Queens?
He'll be in the Bronx today, and then Friday in Queens.
All right. So he has been going around saying that this is an anti-Trump tour. Is this him pivoting? We talked about obviously Cuomo trying to attack him over the apartment, but maybe he's pivoting, being like, I'm kind of above all you all. I was just on the time, not me personally. Now I'm speaking
in Zohran's voice.
Yes, yeah. Right. Mamdani was just on the cover of Time magazine. If people still read Time magazine.
Do they though?
I don't think so. But
I only watch New York One.
Yeah.
I was with Mamdani for his Manhattan stop and for his Brooklyn stop, where he was in Flatbush and he was in Midtown. And, the Manhattan day started out with, him saying, I'm going to highlight what Trump is doing in certain areas. We'll talk about healthcare. We'll talk about education. We'll talk about just these specific neighborhoods where we will probably feel an impact as a result of federal policy and funding cuts. But then as Cuomo started to up the ante about the rent stabilization fight, he got a lot of questions about that and had to really defend his status and talk about the policy. And then the next day in Brooklyn, surrounded by elected officials, it kind of became a Mamdani versus Cuomo conversation.
And less about Trump.
Although he was asked about, I thought this was a good question, listen, you're saying that you will work with Trump if you become mayor and he's the president, but you're also not even elected yet and you're launching this anti-Trump tour. So like, how does that square? And are you worried that you will further bring the ire onto New York City? And, he basically talked around it.
Also, I noticed that he continues to really seize on that New York Times story last week. Was that last week? Saying that Cuomo and Trump had a phone call about the race, which Cuomo denies.
Well for him.
But he's like trying to tie Cuomo to Trump, and obviously thinks it's going to play well in the election because he keeps hammering at that.
Right.
And then, of course, he says that Cuomo should release. What is it?
Release the client list. This was in reaction to the rent stabilization argument. Right. He says that Cuomo was in fact a consultant when he left office.
Right, and we don't know who his clients were.
He at one point was going to represent in front of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, Benjamin Netanyahu. That has been reported, but we don't know to the extent who his other clients are. And Mamdani is saying, release the list, release the list.
It's a pity
Final
when
thoughts,
these people,
because we got to move on.
I was just going to say, it's a pity when these people are no longer in office because you no longer know what their assets are and the disclosures, because Cuomo would have had to have put that down in the ethics report that have to be submitted either, on the state or the city level.
Especially if you're not lobbying technically and you're just doing private consulting behind the scenes, we don't get to know who you're doing it for.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, let's leave it there. When we get back, we're going to talk about the governor's race.
I will work with the next mayor like this. I need the next mayor, whoever it is, the current mayor, next mayor, whoever it is. They have to be successful, and a lot of that success comes to me.
Okay, so a new Siena poll shows Governor Hochul's favorability ticked up ever so slightly, but her lead over her potential 2026 rival is narrowing. I mean, slightly, right? We're talking about Elise Stefanik, obviously, the upstate congresswoman. She's from the North Country. She is a very close ally to President Donald Trump, had been put up as a potential UN ambassador, and then that was basically.
Well, she was put up as the nominee, and then it was pulled.
Yes, because they don't want to lose their seat in the House.
Right.
And
because
there was
the margin is so.
They couldn't figure out who would run. And they didn't want to spend money in a district that's safe when Stefanik holds it.
So now she's basically going to be looking to run for governor. She hasn't officially announced yet, but this new Siena poll showed that a couple months ago, the lead that Hochul had was 47 over 24 over Stefanik.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's 45-31. So she still has a sizable lead, but it's narrowed.
Yeah. I mean, it shrunk. That's quite a big.
Yeah.
I mean, from June to August, she was up 23 points, and now she's up 14 points, which is still a decent lead.
By less than 6 points, right?
To Lee Zeldin.
Yeah.
In
she won. Sorry.
She won by less than 6.
She won. We all know. But that.
Who's bad at math now? Hey, data reporter.
I mean, 14 points is not that much, especially considering, and it was in the poll that like 46% of people who responded to the poll aren't familiar with Elise Stefanik.
Yeah.
So she has room to grow, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, Courtney, she is this attack dog for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, she is so closely tied to Donald Trump. And that's not, there's a pretty sizable chunk of the population in New York State who that's not going to be a problem for.
Right.
But I don't know, if you're like that close of an ally to Trump, can you win a statewide race? I think it's going to be hard for her. But again, 14 points. And we're more than a year out from this election, but it's still fun to talk about. I think a lot can change, but
it feels like to me that Stefanik is kind of ramping up her presence, especially, to us, to New York media, because all of the press releases I'm getting from Stefanik now are just anti-Hochul.
Oh yeah, like every day I get like at least 2 press releases.
Hochul needs to answer for the prison strike. Yeah. I think a few days before it was Hochul needs to answer for bail reform. I mean, I never used to get press releases from Stefanik.
Also, if you look at both Hochul and Stefanik's Twitter, because I was doing a story the other week and I counted like how many tweets they had each referenced one another, or Elise's campaign account retweeting. It was like multiple tweets a day. I can't remember the number, bad at math, but you know what I mean? Like it's a lot more since July 1st than ever before. But another thing with Stefanik and Hochul, this is one of the reasons why when Hochul ascended to the governor's role in 2021, she made a point to go downstate and spend a lot of time downstate, because if you're running a statewide campaign, you cannot win without the city. And especially for a Republican and a Republican from upstate, the difference between Lee Zeldin and Elise Stefanik is Zeldin is from Suffolk County and also a Trump ally, also somebody who voted not to certify the election, right? And Stefanik is from upstate. The last time I interviewed her, she told me she said, the subways were scary. And I said, well, did you ride the subway while you were down here? And she said, no. And it's like, well, this is like a key.
They look scary on TV.
They look scary. I'm like, look, they are a little scary. I mean, look, they don't work. But there's a real, where push comes to shove, like she's going to have to spend time down here and not just in closed doors, like Republican areas. Like, remember when Nicole Maliotakis, when I was an intern, I went with Courtney, and she was running for mayor. Nicole is a Staten Island girl, and she would go around.
She knew her way around.
She knew her way around
New
the
York
city
issues.
But Stefanik, I would say does not as well. But look, I think Hochul would have had a harder time if Michael Lawler had stayed in the race.
Yeah, I think so too.
But Stefanik said she'll decide after the November elections. This Siena poll, the sample size was 300 people. How many live in the city? How many live in the state?
I think the 300 was only for.
I'm sorry,
that was the number of cities.
Sorry, right. The number of people in the city.
Which is why the numbers for the mayor's race was not a big enough.
Yeah,
it was not really that big of a sample size.
But for Stefanik, and if her unknown figure is, what would you say, above 40%? That needs to be. And then if we go jumping away from the Republicans, looking at the Democrats, who will Hochul's challengers be? Richie Torres says he's not going to go.
Antonio Delgado's obviously running.
Antonio Delgado's running, but again, we never see him downstate.
That was in the poll too. It was she was up 50 points to 15 points on Delgado, so that's a 35-point lead.
And there's also that question where it says, would you prefer to vote for Kathy Hochul or someone else? And it's still
someone
else.
Yeah.
It just depends on who that someone else is.
Maybe it's Bobby.
She's been out. I mean, she's always out and about. She's not someone that we don't talk to very.
She is out and about.
She feels a little bit more present recently. Maybe it's just present for us. I feel like she's been in here a couple times.
I was just with her in a diner.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That was my segue. My segue was that Zohran, you were just sharing soup with her.
Yeah, she got a soup on a really hot day, and then when she left and I was working on my piece, I got a soup.
There is some truth that if you have a hot beverage or a hot meal, when it's hot out, it cools you down.
Yeah.
Wait, what did you order?
Well, nothing when I was talking to her because I was like, I was like, keep eating. And then she was like trying to eat and trying to lift the soup. And I was like, but Sonia, so what do you think about, come on, you know what I mean? Couldn't eat, took the soup to go. But she got a hot tea and an iced tea and a water, and she got the soup.
It's a lot of beverages.
I know, a lot. I totally relate to that because I get an orange juice, a seltzer, and a coffee.
Yeah,
so
okay.
You got to say.
I like a lot of beverages.
This wasn't in your.
Like
this wasn't in your report. This is actually the most interesting part of the interview.
I know. I should have talked about it more. Why didn't you ask me?
So
Bobby?
what substantively, with the exception, just let's put aside the beverages and the soups and all that stuff.
So what'd you talk about?
Yeah, what did she
So
actually say?
the first thing I asked her was, I was like, you're running for reelection and you have to deal with millions of dollars in agency cuts that you're already we know is concrete, the Medicaid stuff, right? And she said it's going to be tough, like nursing home, hospital reimbursements, senior centers. We visited a senior center and she, made a speech to these seniors. But, Hochul has been able to have a good relationship with Donald Trump. Unlike some other female other Democratic governors, but specifically I think it's interesting, the female Democratic governors. Trump, I think, at a couple months back or weeks back, was calling out some female Democratic governors, in kind of, a not flattering way. But he's never said anything like that about Hochul.
Interesting.
I think it's very interesting because she's able to have an audience in the Oval Office with him, convince him not to continue to put the kibosh on congestion pricing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say on that wind project.
The wind project she got back.
She's reversed.
She was able to reverse that. And now this pipeline project is under public comment period. I think it might have closed the past weekend or this weekend. And that could end up being a go. They're working together on Penn Station. So anyway, I said to her, I was like, why do you think you have a good relationship? And she was like, I think because I tell him how it is, and I think we're both New Yorkers, and we can relate over that.
Yeah, she said something to you like, he's tough.
He's tough, and I'm
tough.
And, right, and she's like upstate tough, which is a different kind of tough than New York City tough.
It's Buffalo tough.
It's Buffalo. My family's from Syracuse. My dad's from Rockaway. I can tell you.
That was Buffalo nice.
No, you're not nice. No one's really nice. No one's really nice in this world.
Back to the governor.
Bobby over here. Nice guy.
You asked her about Stefanik. What did she say about that?
Well, she said that she's not concerned. Right now, she's focused on dealing with the president and dealing with what's coming out of Washington and handling other things in New York. She really does have a lot on her plate. I asked her how Mamdani could possibly complicate this, and is that one of the reasons why she's keeping her powder dry with an endorsement? And she said, look, whoever the mayor is, I'm going to have to work with. However, just going off of her many differences that she said she has with Mamdani, she says she wants him to have a reset with the NYPD. Past comments from him were, less than favorable. And then she also said that she wants him to make sure that the Jewish community feels safe.
There's got to be a reset with the police department. That's an area. I want to make sure that the Jewish community, feels safe and that they'll be protected, that, that anti-Semitism will not just be condemned but fought. So those are a couple of areas, but there's a lot of alignment and agreement on affordability.
Final thoughts on where you think Hochul stands in this poll. Bobby, I'll give them to you.
I mean, it's such a mixed bag because her job approval is up and she's ahead in the race, but it's narrowing, like you said. So, but I think the fact that she doesn't have to worry about a primary, I mean, she was facing these like daily attacks from Richie Torres, the Bronx congressman who was thinking about running, and now he's dropped that idea. So the fact that she doesn't have these attacks from fellow Democrats to deal with.
I mean, she has Delgado, but
Delgado, but he really hasn't gotten any traction at this point. So the fact that she may not really have to worry about a serious challenge in the primary, I think really helps her, and she can just focus on the general. And again, we've got a lot of runway here. It's more than a year out.
We have so much more to talk about the
but it's clearly I feel like the battle lines are being drawn, and we're seeing how this race is going to play out.
Okay, that's going to have to do it for this week's episode. Remember, you can always watch us on Inside City Hall on weeknights at 7 o'clock, and we love your feedback. You can send us an email at yourstoryNewYork1@charter.com. You can subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube, which we hope you're doing right now. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a review or a comment. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman, in the corner. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.